Well, hello everybody and welcome to Chef's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make an apple almond tart. This is from a recipe on robinhood.ca, which is a website in Canada. Robinhood is a producer of flour basically, and other things I'm sure, but flour is one of their main things, and they have recipes on their site, and my sister in Canada sent me this recipe. And having some apples available, I thought I would actually give it a try. It's not a difficult recipe, but it has three distinct stages. You make the pastry, then you make the filling, and then you put the apples and some raspberry jam on top. So it's, as I said, not difficult, and I'll go on to the ingredients. And for the pastry, I have 160 grams, which is 1 cup plus 1 tablespoon, based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup of plain flour. I have 50 grams, a quarter of a cup of caster sugar, 113 grams, half a cup of unsalted butter, which is cold and I've cut it into cubes. I have the yolk from 1 medium egg, that would be large in the USA and Canada. I have 30 millilitres, 2 tablespoons of cold water, and 1.5 grams, a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. Then for the filling, I have 100 grams, half a cup of caster sugar, 113 grams, half a cup of softened unsalted butter. I have 1.5 millilitres, a quarter of a teaspoon of almond extract, 5 millilitres, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, a pinch of salt. I'm going to use 2 medium eggs, which would be large in the USA. And I'm also going to use, to go between the pastry and the filling, 45 millilitres, which is 3 tablespoons of seedless raspberry jam. And here I have 6 tablespoons, 90 millilitres, because we use the other 45 later on. And so to go on top of the almond mixture, I have some sliced apples, and I had 3 relatively small apples, which I've peeled and sliced quite thinly. You may need 2 apples, you may need 3, but it's enough to cover the surface of the tart once the almond filling has gone in. And I have 28 grams, which is a quarter of a cup of flaked or shaved or slivered almonds, and as I said, another 45 millilitres, 3 tablespoons of the seedless raspberry jam. And the first thing I'm going to do is to make the pastry. And to make the pastry, I'm going to do it in the processor bowl of my immersion blender, and I'm going to put the flour in and the 50 grams of sugar and the 1.5 grams of salt. I'm just going to shake that a little bit, and then I'll just pulse it a couple of times to get those ingredients combined. And that's good like that. So then I'm going to add in my cold butter. I'm just going to shake it to get that butter coated a little bit, and then I'm going to process that until it resembles sort of fine breadcrumbs. And that looks quite good, as you can see. So then I'm going to put in my egg yolk, and I'm going to add in most of my water, but I'm going to hold just a little bit back. And I'm going to process that until it begins to come together into a dough. adding more water if I need it. And I can see that that's come into a dough, and I've actually got 2 teaspoons of water left there, so I don't need those. So I'm going to put that onto some plastic wrap, and I'm actually going to just squeeze that together and form it into a disc. And that's good like that. So I'll cover that up, and I'm going to put that into the fridge, and I'm going to chill it for about 30 minutes. And during that 30 minutes I'll come back and we'll make our filling, and I will also preheat my oven at that point to 200 degrees Celsius, that's 400 Fahrenheit. I've decided to roll the pastry out and then chill it once it's in the tart tin. So I've put the pastry on a lightly floured piece of plastic wrap, and that's because I'm going to try to use that to put it into the tin. And I want to roll this out to a diameter of about 12 inches. And I think that's probably good enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to tip that over onto the base of my tart tin. Like that. And then I'm going to fold in the edges and drop it into the actual pan like that. And then I'm going to line it, and where I have thicker pastry I will cut some off and use it to patch the thinner areas. And that's good enough like that. So I'm going to put that in the fridge and I'm going to chill it. And as it's chilling, we'll go on to preheat the oven to 200 Celsius, 400 Fahrenheit, and I'll make the filling to go inside this. And making the filling is actually very easy indeed. I'm simply going to put the sugar and the softened butter into a bowl, and I'm going to cream it together. So that's nicely creamed together. So I'm going to add in my salt and my vanilla extract and the almond extract and one of the eggs, and I'm going to beat that in, and then once that egg is beaten in fully I'm going to add the other one and do the same, beat it again. that's good like that. So then I'm going to add in my ground almonds, and I may have forgotten to say about the ground almonds in the ingredients. If I did, it's 150 grams of ground almonds, which is 1.5 cups. And I'm just going to mix that until it's fully combined. And that's actually quite good, but I'm going to use a spatula just to scrape down the sides and mix it through a little bit. So I'll just set that aside for a moment. I have just chilled that briefly while I've made my filling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 3 tablespoons of jam and I'm going to spread that over the pastry. The other 3 tablespoons I've just lightly warmed so that I can sort of drizzle that later on onto the apples a little bit, or drip it rather than drizzle probably. So I'm just going to coat the base of this with that 3 tablespoons, and that's good enough like that. So then I'm going to put the almond mixture in, and I'm going to spread that over the jam. And that seems to be fairly level, I think. It doesn't really matter that much. So then I'm going to take my slices of apple and I'm going to place those on and press them down a little bit. And that's good enough like that, I think. So then, with my other 3 tablespoons of raspberry jam, which I have slightly warmed through, I'm simply going to try to drip some and drizzle it a little bit over the apples. I don't matter if it's not neat, because we're going to actually cover it as well with our flaked almonds, and that's good enough like that. So then I'm going to take my flaked almonds and I'm going to sprinkle those over the top. And that's good enough. And then the last thing I'm going to do is just to take a knife and cut off around the edge. I could leave the pastry on, but I'm going to cut it off, it doesn't matter. Just to neaten the edge a bit. It's likely to shrink the pastry a little bit as it cooks. And that's ready to go into the oven. So I'm going to put it into the oven and I'm going to bake it for 15 minutes. And after 15 minutes, I'm going to reduce the temperature of the oven to 180 degrees Celsius, that's 350 Fahrenheit, and I'm going to cook it or bake it for another 45 to 50 minutes until it's nicely browned over the top and cooked all the way through. And at that stage I'll take it out of the oven and I'll put it onto a wire rack in the tart tin and leave it for a little while to cool, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And then once it's cooled and firmed up a bit, I'll take it out of the tart pan, and when it's completely cool I'll come back and show you the results. I baked the apple almond cake for 15 minutes and then reduced the temperature and baked it for a further 45 minutes. The pastry seemed to be browning too quickly, so I covered the top with some aluminium foil, and it was still quite brown, but it's certainly baked through. So this is what it looks like, and I've cut a piece out so that you can see the inside as well. So you can see the raspberry jam, the pastry on the bottom, and then the raspberry jam, then the almond filling with the apple on the top. So I'll have a taste of this. The filling is nice and soft. I get the fruitiness from the apple and then that hit of raspberry jam as well. Very, very good. It is of course very similar to a Bakewell tart, which has the almond paste or the almond frangipane, the pastry and the raspberry jam, but this has the addition of the apple as well. Very, very good indeed. So it's actually not a difficult recipe. I estimate that it takes about 40 minutes of preparation, and then the baking time 60 minutes, 55 to 65 minutes, something like that. And so it's not very difficult at all. So that's going to be it for this recipe, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me a thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.